We're very excited to be here at the Apurture booth, always one of the more exciting booths at the show. I'm here with Brandon Lee, and rather than talking about tech specs, I really am interested in talking about the Apurture corporate culture and how that affects everything that we as filmmakers end up getting down the line. I say this because last year at the Apurture launch party, when I was looking for the bathroom, the security guard directed me right into Ted's green room, and about 4 minutes before he was going to go on stage. So he's got his note cards, and he doesn't know who I am, but he looks up, he puts his note card down, stands up, walks over to me, and gives me the biggest, warmest hug that I've had in years. And he's like, "We're so happy to be here. Thank you for coming." And I was just like, you know, when you're in the booth and you start talking to Apurture employees, that same quality, it permeates the entire company. And I really do feel like that's a lot of where your success comes from, even though Ted would be way too modest about it.
Oh yeah, he'd definitely be too modest about that. I mean, it's really important for us, like a lot of us started out as filmmakers, so we know the struggles of filmmakers, we know the struggles of being on set, and we know how hard everyone in this industry works. So we also know that everyone in this industry, no matter how many times we may bicker on and off set, at the end of the day, we all love each other and we all are supportive of just growing creatively together. So when we see each other at events like Super Secret Film Dinner, when we see each other at events like NAB, it's really great to be able to say hi to those faces that we've been just seeing on Zoom, to the faces that we've been seeing like across the way, or you've been just seeing on Instagram. We're getting to say hi to Brandon.
And I will say
again.
that warmth also gets conveyed to people who are just early enthusiasts as well, not just the people you know. Everyone's always equally warm to someone who's just sort of coming up with that. You know the look when someone's like, I don't really know what I'm looking at, but I'm curious. I've always seen you guys have really, like, let's bring you into the fold.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's because, like I said, we've all been there. Like, I was there. Before I started working at Apurture, I was a cinematographer. I was using Apurture products like the MX, the M9, the original 300D Mark I, and then going forward, I also understand like what it's like to be that person who's like, oh, I can finally get something that's affordable, that's accessible to me, that I can actually use on the type of set that I'm working on to elevate my craft.
Well, that brings me to my next question, which is, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about your approach to road mapping products. A lot of companies, if they have something like Apurture and then they have Amaran, for a lot of companies that would mean this is not a brand that we're sort of just trying to capture a lower end market, but we really don't want the two to be associated with each other. But I've been on some pretty big sets where both lights were being used concurrently. The Amaran just happened to be, you know, the right thing for the job, and no one bats an eye. And you got them both at the same booth. So it's not like just this quiet little thing. You really respect that you came up from the indie roots and you don't want to leave these filmmakers behind. I mean, I'm saying that. You tell me more about how.
Yeah, for sure.
About that ethos.
Like you're saying, everything's always all at the same booth, and even if they're two separate booths right across the way from each other, we're all going to be showcasing them in full force, because Amaran users and how that got rebranded is just to indicate to everyone, hey, Apurture has grown up a little bit, we've matured, and we know how to make some products that are a little bit nicer and more professional now, but at the same time, we know who we came up with. We know that we started with indie filmmakers, we know that we started with content creators, and we know that those people still need tools to use on their sets. Because at the end of the day, when Apurture first started, it was with the goal of creating tools that people could access more easily. It was started during the DSLR revolution. Canon 5Ds were coming out. People were finally able to buy a camera to get good quality images at a lower price point. So there had to be lights that accompanied that. And that was kind of the whole ethos behind Apurture and Amaran. So coming up, we also want to make sure that no matter how expensive or how professional an Apurture product gets, that there's always some Amaran counterpart that you can use that delivers all the value that you need, whether you're starting out or even if you're an indie professional. I see so many corporate videographers and filmmakers who still use Amaran products all the time, because it's all about finding a product that suits your needs specifically, and that's what Amaran's about. For example, just last year at NAB2023, we did the LS600C Pro. And that was a huge thing. That was our most advanced light to date. But this year we wanted to come out with the 150C and 300C because, again, we want to call back to those indie filmmaker roots, call back to those creators, call back to everyone who says, I want the functionality of a 600C Pro, but I can't afford that, and I don't need all the bells and whistles like CRMX, DMX, whatever. I just want a light that suits my needs. I can control what sight is.
So, how far out do you have your roadmap? And is there a holy grail sort of thing that like, and this is where we feel really like we're meeting all of the demand of what filmmakers need? Is there like a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, or how is this done? Is it more just like we're looking at the feedback come in and it's like, okay, that thing seems like this is what people want. How do you figure out what fits in or what's next? Because you always have something new, and I know that the development cycle it can only be so short.
Yeah.
What is that like for you internally?
It's a combination of both things. We got to think pretty far ahead in terms of where we want to be. So when we were a few years ago, we were thinking, okay, in a few years we want Apurture to represent something that can be used on high-end filmmaking sets, something that is made for the professionals. That's something that we had to decide quite a few years ago. But at the same time, we also had to say, like, okay, Amaran accordingly has to step up its game a little bit and not just be more than what it was, and also provide extra value. At the time, it was just creating high quality light at a value price, and now it's creating the best quality light that you can get that suits the needs of the end user, no matter who they are, whether they're an Apurture user, someone who's working on professional film sets with more than 50 people, or there's an Amaran user who's still trying to just get by with on their own, or up to groups of like 10 or 20 people on set, or the people who are in between, because let's face it, a lot of us live in between. I would consider myself in that category, where I'm like, I want to use a 1200D Pro, but I also want to use this P60C because this is actually the right tool for this kind of shot, and I don't have any Apurture equivalent. So at the end of the day, we're thinking pretty far ahead, but if you also notice, sometimes we come out with a Pro version, we come out with a Mark II, and that's because we also always want to be listening to what our users are saying. At the end of the day, it's a combination of both of those things that helps direct us, and if something is imperative, the users really need something, that's when we'll come through and say, okay, we need to make a fix, or we need to make a second iteration on this to really get everything right. Take, for example, just right behind me here, we have the bracket for the F22C and F21C. We came out with the F22C, F21C about a year ago in 2022, and now we have this new bracket for it because a lot of users were having some issues with some of our original designs, and we said, okay, that's not okay. We want to satisfy the needs of our users and make this a lot more robust. So we went back and redesigned what this bracket looks like and feels like and how it works, and I'm happy to say that it's a lot better, and actually everyone who has used it and touched it has been super happy. So it's definitely a combination of, I can't only think 3 or 4 or 5 years in the future, I also have to be in the here and now to make sure that I'm listening to everything that everyone needs at the end of the day.
Well, Apurture definitely seems like one of the most responsive companies in the space. I have one more question that just occurred to me, and it's like LED technology. We've seen in the last, I could have said 5 years, or I could have said 10 years, or 15 years, just the technology, the core technology evolves so quickly. It definitely seems to follow something of a Moore's Law kind of curve. I go to Burning Man, and I remember when if you had LEDs on anything, that meant you were one of the millionaire camps, and now people will just throw LED lights at you, like like it's candy. What is that like from a development standpoint, and in terms of like, is it challenging in terms of like, okay, well, we're not there yet, or is it exciting that like, well, in a very short time, where the core technology is going to let us do things that we couldn't dream about a year ago? How do you balance that when it's such a fast-moving target?
It's a little bit of both. So here you are thinking, okay, and then you have to think about what you can do with the technology you have at hand right now, because especially for a technology that's going to satisfy most users that isn't necessarily the most cutting edge, you have to think, okay, what do I have access to now that I don't have to do years and years of development on in order to get to, or what in a few years from now will be so commonplace that I can't use it for an Amaran product at the end of the day, like the TIR lenses that I use on the P60C and on the P60X. Thinking ahead to that, it's like this technology is going to be pretty prolific in a few years, just waiting for that time to work on that type of product. But at the same time, also trying to advance as fast as you can.
And there must be some challenge if there's like, oh, but if we use this particular thing that's available now, this will be obsolete way too soon. So there's a lot of balancing there, right?
Exactly. You have to think really far ahead in terms of what technology is, but it's also super exciting because there'll be some days where we're talking with the engineers and we'll say, hey, is this a solution that we can have? And they say, oh, maybe not right now. But sometimes a few months, sometimes a year, and sometimes just a few weeks later, we'll have them come back and say, actually, we figured out a solution. Actually, there is a new solution on the market. Or actually, we have developed
So you're
something.
planting seeds with your engineers as to like what you want.
And that's why technology has to always keep on growing behind the scenes, even beyond the product. Your technology has to constantly be developed to see what is accessible to you when it comes time to put that tech inside a product, whether it's the actual core LED technology, the things that you use to control the LEDs, or even things like Sidus Link, which is like an app, but because it uses mesh technology and there's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to do in connection with the hardware, that also has to be thought ahead, and sometimes the programmers
I was actually trying to avoid talking about Sidus Link because I could deep dive and get really geeky about that. I'm like, that interview will get too long. It's pretty amazing. I mean, especially in terms of being able to play well with others. That on sets, I've had that direct experience of like this. It's almost crazy that this is such a game changer for the way you're really operating. I've got everything on my phone, and all I had to do was set everything up in advance, and then my director is I keep him happy, and I don't have to worry. The best feeling is when he's about to turn to me and is like, he wants a light load, and like, I'm already there, I'm already on it. Yeah. But but I was afraid of like, I could, like I said, I could go, that's a rabbit hole that I could spend all day down.
100%.
So, thank you for that.
I remember seeing the initial prototype of Sidus Link and like all that Sidus mesh technology. We housed the technology of it inside of a little M9 chassis. Like we took the body of guts out of an M9 and we put all the tech inside of an M9 just so we can play around with it. Yeah. So you're seeing what the timeline is for all of these different developments. It's pretty long to get to where we need to go. So we need to be thinking about not what our users just need right now, but also what they're going to need in the future. Or how can we solve something that no one has even thought about yet? That's what we're also trying to get to do.
So what is NAB2024? What are you going to show us?
I can't tell you just now. I can't tell you just yet. Maybe I don't even know yet, to be completely honest.
No, the only thing I've ever been like, I wish they'd done this differently was that we love the MC. The second generation, I wish you'd called it the MC squared.
That could have been cool.
But other than that, and I got to wrap this up so that we don't go forever, because I really could. But thank you so much, and it's always really exciting to see what Apurture is bringing to the table, and it's also just really nice to catch up with everybody. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming by the booth.
Thank you.
Thank you.